This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. So a few years ago, Sony made a step in the right direction to bring some of their older titles and classics back for the PS4 and PS5 owners. Through the PSN or from the PS Plus premium service, players could experience a selection, though a small amount, of older titles. At the time, I really liked this announcement because of the potential that it could bring for future games. The offerings at first were kinda weak outside of Siphon Filter. It was nice to see this gem back, and my guess is that some of the developers at Bend Studios wanted to see this game back too. Over the years, we have seen more titles added to the collection. It's a very slow drip feed of classics that we can play. The odd thing is that we do not have all of the games that were available on the PS1 Classic console either. I appreciate Sony trying to make efforts to bring older games back and make them more accessible today, but they could be doing a lot more. Something else that was odd was that we saw games from the PS1 and PSP being added to the PSN, but there were no PS2 titles being added at all. Now yes, several years ago on the PS4 we got a small selection of PS2 titles that became available, but it was very random what was presented there. Like, you got most of the Jack games from Sony, but other mascots weren't there. But it appears that after Sony partnered with a new porting company, PS2 games are now coming back, and the first 3 will be available on June 11th, so I thought it would be fun to discuss them here today. So first one up is the original Sly Cooper. The original Sly and honestly Trilogy are a beloved set of PS2 games that many players have fond memories of. Recently, I actually beat the first game again, as I plan to hopefully tackle the entire series soon too. Sly 1 has aged like fine wine. They just don't make games like this anymore, especially from Sony or within the AAA space. This action platformer with enjoyable stealth elements is something that feels like a breath of fresh air playing it today. Jumping, attacking, swinging, and even sneaking all feel really good. Sly very much brings it as a game, and what I mean by this is that it delivers on each one of its aspects. First and foremost, the game is fun, from the platforming challenges, navigating the various levels, completing minigames, sneaking around enemies, defeating bosses, and trying not to get shot from Carmelita. Variety is high here, and when you mix that in with the pacing, this game just flies by. Sure, Sly 1 isn't very long, but it is an enjoyable ride right from hitting start. Then you pack on that visual style. You don't see stuff like this anymore. I remember that during that generation they were trying to do that cell shading a lot, and as the years went on, stuff like this has aged like fine wine. So yes, the game plays good, looks good, and even sounds good too. The dynamic tracks are memorable, and you get a nice mixture of tunes that appropriately fit into the sneaky atmosphere, along with both Western and even Asian elements. And as the cherry on top, the story is really good as well. Sucker Punch really nailed this, as they knew how to make a great game, but not only present it well too. The comic book-like cutscenes with vibrant visuals and moving objects is a treat for the eyes. It's always good when you return back to a title from the past, and the game manages to stand the test of time. Sly Cooper, oddly enough, is something that has turned into more of an underrated and overlooked mascot and games from Sony. It's something that really shouldn't be though. They were popular when they came out and received well, but as the years went on, it seems like Sony has very much ignored it. But now we get a chance to see Sly back in action, and now new players can experience what made this game so special to begin with. The second game is a Star Wars title that is easily one of the most underrated, especially when focusing on the prequel games. The prequels were a fun time to live through as a child. Personally, I really enjoyed the movies, with Revenge of the Sith being easily one of my favorite Star Wars films. In many cases, the games were able to expand on areas that were touched on the films. We might see a bit of a new character or event, and then the games would then expand upon this. So then we would be getting a continuation of the story, along with allowing for other smaller stories to then have a chance to shine. When thinking back to this time, I think many of us would instantly think of the Battlefront games. And I mean, how could you not? Both of these titles are legendary and continue to be a gold standard for other Star Wars games to follow. And more importantly, they were made by Pandemic, a developer that I still miss this today. But before any of the Battlefront games, they got their feet wet with Star Wars The Clone Wars. This was a console game that would be more of a movie tie-in game of sorts for Attack of the Clones. I still really enjoyed playing this game, and I recently played it a few years ago, and it still holds up very well. You get to experience the Battle of Geonosis from different perspectives, especially then when we only saw this in the film, along with being able to see a bit more of the Clone Wars that was all new to us at the time. The land vehicles are the true stars here, and I love the main Republic tank. Lots of explosions and plenty of things to blow up. The gunship levels were great player power levels where you pretty much were unstoppable. Now there were some parts where you were on the ground with a lightsaber, but they controlled pretty clunky and still do to this day. Thankfully they are short and not the main focus. It's a short and sweet title with a solid campaign and fun additional modes to enjoy. Even some fun multiplayer as well. It's a game that remains as one that I'd like to revisit many times. Now the third game is Tomb Raider Legends, which kicked off a new trilogy at the time featuring Lara Croft. My history with this one is probably a bit different from other Tomb Raider fans. I dabbled a bit with the original Tomb Raider games, but I never really beat any of them, or got into them as much as I honestly should have. But it was always one of those series that I appreciated and wanted to get into more. Well, when Tomb Raider Legend came out, it was one of those titles that I saw advertised and just had to drop whatever I was doing and try it out then. I started up and I fell in love with it. I was a huge fan of the Prince of Persia games at the time and I was eager for another action platformer. But instead of swords, I had guns in this. I really enjoyed Legends. It was like this very enjoyable and focused adventure game that felt like I was playing a treasure hunting film. Lara, as always, makes for a compelling main hero and character. I found myself invested in the story as well. The action was fun, and the entire game brought a good amount of exciting location variety too. It was definitely on the shorter side of things, but that just meant that I would replay it a bunch. Now this title is one out of the three that I haven't played in a long time, so at the same time it might still be good and I'm very excited to see if it still holds up. And I honestly think that this is one that should stand the test of time and probably did age well, but we'll be able to figure that out soon enough. So those are the three PS2 games coming back. I'm hoping that Sony decides to release more PS2 games. Personally, I'd love to see the sequels to Sly, Siphon Filter the Omega Strain, Tomb Raider Anniversary, more Star Wars titles, the Medal of Honor games, and especially the Bond titles. Some of these games might be harder to get out because of the licensing, but I hope that some agreements can be made. Just think of the possibilities to see titles like X-Men Legends back, and accessible to new players, even the Time Splitter games too. There's so many games that should come back, and if I had it my way, we'd have them all. I am more interested in these older games than the newer titles from Sony anyway, so hopefully they can step it up when it comes to this. Are you excited for the PS2 games to come back? What titles would you like to see return? Let me know all of this in the comments down below. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.